Ethan was a soldier, trained for years in war. He had fought battles on Earth, but nothing could have prepared him for life inside the alien base. It was cold, made of black stone and glowing blue lines, and filled with creatures taller and stronger than him. He was there as part of the peace treaty between humans and the alien race called the Varen. Humans had to send one soldier as a guest to show trust, and he had been chosen. He didn't like it, but orders were orders. The first day, he met her. Her name was Zyra. She was not just a Varen, she was from the warrior class, tall, with silver blue skin and eyes that glowed like fire. Her armor looked more like a piece of art than battle gear, and she moved like a predator. When she saw Ethan, she tilted her head and smirked. "So this is the human. Looks soft," she said loudly. The other aliens laughed. Ethan kept his face calm. He had dealt with worse from that moment. Zyra seemed to make it her mission to annoy him. Every time he walked past, she would poke his arm with one clawed finger. Sometimes she would flick his ear or tap the back of his head. "Do all humans have skin this week?" she would ask. Or, "Careful human, you might break if you trip." Ethan would ignore her, walking on as if he didn't hear. But inside, he could feel his patience slowly burning away at meals. She would sit next to him, even when there were empty seats. She would push his food plate away and ask if humans could survive on real warrior food instead of mushy human rations. She would bump his shoulder hard when she passed, pretending it was an accident. Sometimes she even followed him during training, making loud comments so the others could hear. "Your punches are slow," she'd say. "Do you humans even fight with teeth?" Her friends would laugh. Ethan would just look at her for a moment, say nothing, and continue. But every time, his jaw would tighten just a little more. The truth was, Ethan knew exactly what she was doing. The Varen valued strength above everything else. If you were strong, they respected you. If you were weak, they treated you like a toy. Zyra had decided that Ethan was a toy, and she was testing him in front of everyone one evening after a long day. Ethan sat alone in the small quarters the aliens had given him. He was trying to write a letter to his sister back on Earth. Suddenly, the door slid open without warning. Zyra stepped inside, leaning against the wall with that same smirk. "You know," she said, "most humans would have snapped by now." Ethan didn't look up from his letter. "Maybe I'm not most humans." She walked closer, crouching down so her face was level with his. "I think you're just afraid," she whispered. Her glowing eyes locked on his. "Afraid that if you fought back, you'd lose." Ethan's hand paused over the paper. He finally looked up at her, his eyes calm but sharp. "I don't fight unless I have to," he said. Zyra chuckled, standing up. "Then maybe I'll just have to keep poking you until you do," she said, tapping his chest with her finger before walking out. The door slid shut behind her. Ethan sat still for a moment, then slowly set his pen down. He leaned back in his chair and let out a quiet breath. She thought he was afraid. She thought he was weak. She had no idea. The next day during training drills, Zyra didn't let up. She called out fake advice while he practiced. She made loud comments to the others about how slow humans learn. Ethan ignored her, but something had changed inside him. Now, every time she poked him, every time she laughed, he was watching her, measuring her, waiting for the perfect moment. He didn't just want her to stop. He wanted to make sure she never tried this with him again. And deep down, a part of him wanted something else too. He wanted to see the look on her face when she realized the human she had been mocking wasn't playing her game anymore. That moment wasn't here yet, but it was coming. Soon, the days passed. But Zyra's attitude didn't change. If anything, she seemed to enjoy finding new ways to irritate Ethan. She treated it like a sport. Whenever she saw him, her smirk would appear, and the poking, the teasing, the comments would start. During breakfast, she would lean over the table, take a piece of his bread without asking, and bite into it while staring him in the eyes. When they passed each other in the hallways, she would step into his path, forcing him to stop. Sometimes she would make him walk around her like he was nothing. The other Varen warriors found this amusing. They would laugh and whisper to each other. In their culture, if someone let this go on, it meant they accepted their lower place. Ethan knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't just random bullying. This was a test. She was seeing how far she could push him before he fought back. The Varen respected dominance. You didn't show strength, you were prey. Ethan had spent enough time in combat to know you don't waste energy on small fights. You wait for the right moment. You pick the time and place where your message will be loud enough for everyone to hear. The chance came one afternoon during the training arena drills. The Varen warriors were practicing hand-to-hand combat in a large circle, even though it was training. No one held back. It was full speed. The sand floor was marked with boot prints and blood from split lips. Ethan was watching from the side when Zyra's voice called out, "Human, step in." The crowd turned to look at him. She was standing in the middle, one hand on her hip, smiling like she had already won. He could have refused. He could have said it wasn't his turn, but instead, Ethan stepped forward, rolling his shoulders. He had been waiting for this. The spar began. Zyra circled him like a hunting animal. She moved fast, her boots kicking up sand. The crowd chanted in their alien tongue. A rhythm of excitement, she made the first move, striking low. Testing his reflexes, Ethan blocked easily, but didn't counter. Zyra smirked, too slow to hit back. He didn't reply, just kept his eyes locked on her. Every step she took, he measured. Every strike she threw, he read. Then she decided to humiliate him. She kicked his legs out, sending him to the sand. Before he could stand, she placed her armored boot on his chest. She bent down, poked his cheek with one claw, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You humans really are harmless." The crowd laughed. Ethan lay there for half a second, breathing slowly. He could feel every pair of alien eyes on him. This was the moment he had been waiting for. In one sudden move, he grabbed her ankle and twisted, forcing her off balance as she stumbled forward. He pulled himself up, gripped her arm, and yanked her close. The crowd went silent. Ethan's jaw tightened, and before Zyra could react, he bit her. Not playfully, not lightly. His teeth sank into the spot between her neck and shoulder. It was quick, controlled, but strong enough to make her gasp. When he let go, she staggered back, eyes wide. Her hand went to the bite mark. Feeling the heat there, the silence in the arena was heavy. No one laughed now. Zyra's expression was unreadable, half shock, half something else. Ethan calmly stepped back and said in a level voice, "Where I'm from, that means stop." The crowd began to whisper. Some of the warriors looked at Ethan with new eyes. Others glanced at Zyra, waiting to see what she would do. But she didn't move. She just stood there, staring at him, her, breathing slow but deep. What Ethan didn't know, what no human could know, was that in Varen culture, biting wasn't seen as childish or rude. It was a sign, a direct act of claiming dominance, of saying, "I am not beneath you." And when it was done in public, it carried even more weight. Zyra understood that instantly. She had been trying to push him into showing strength. She just hadn't expected him to show it in that way. Ethan walked out of the circle without looking back. The crowd parted for him. No one blocked his path. No one called him pet human anymore. And somewhere behind him, Zyra stood frozen, one hand on the bite mark. Her thoughts a storm of anger, pride, and something she didn't want to name yet. The training arena was still buzzing hours after it happened. The human had bitten Zyra right there in front of everyone. No one could stop talking about it. Some laughed in disbelief, some whispered in respect, and a few just shook their heads. To them, It was more than a bite. It was a challenge, a claim, and an insult, all at the same time. Ethan didn't care about alien politics. He hadn't done it to follow their rules. He had done it to make one thing clear: he wasn't here to be anyone's toy, but Zyra. Zyra cared. For a Varen warrior, being challenged in front of others was like a cut that wouldn't heal, and being bitten. That was something she couldn't just laugh off. For 2 days, she didn't speak to him. She didn't poke him, didn't sit near him, didn't even make eye contact. The others thought maybe it was over. Maybe she had accepted his dominance, but Ethan knew better. He could see it in the way she trained sharper, faster, more aggressive than before. She wasn't ignoring him because she was defeated. She was waiting, just like he had waited for his moment. She was now waiting for hers. On the 3rd day, the silence broke. Ethan was in the mess hall, sitting alone with a tray of food. The Varen around him talked in low voices, stealing glances at him. Then the room grew quiet. He didn't need to look up to know why. He could feel her presence before she spoke. Human, her voice was calm, too calm. He looked up and saw Zyra standing over him. Her eyes didn't have their usual mocking glow. They were sharp, cold, focused. "Come to the training floor," she said. It wasn't a request. Ethan set his fork down and stood without a word. He followed her through the halls until they reached the empty training arena. The sand floor had been freshly raked, the air heavy with the smell of metal and oil. She stepped into the circle, turned and faced him. "You embarrassed me," she said simply. Ethan met her gaze. "You pushed me." Her lips twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. "I'm going to push harder," she said. The fight began without a signal. Zyra moved first, fast, powerful. No teasing this time. Ethan blocked, dodged, countered, but she was relentless. Each strike sharper than the last. She wasn't playing for the crowd. Now she was fighting for herself, for her pride, and every hit that landed on Ethan carried that weight. He held his ground. Her punches hit like steel. Her kicks drove him back, but every time he stumbled, he came right back at her. The sand shifted under their feet. Their breathing grew heavy. Minutes passed, and still, neither gave in. Finally, she knocked him down with a hard sweep to his legs. Before he could rise, she pinned him with her knee on his chest. Her hands gripped his wrists, pressing them into the sand. Her face was inches from his. Her voice, low but fierce, "Biting me was more than you understand," she said. Ethan stared up at her. "Then explain it." She didn't. Instead, she held him there for a moment longer, as if testing him. Then she let go and stood. Stepping back, Ethan sat up slowly, brushing sand from his arms. She looked at him for a long moment, her chest rising and falling. "You're not like the others," she finally said. It wasn't a compliment, it was a statement. Then she turned and left the arena, leaving him alone with the silence. That night, Ethan lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He replayed the fight in his head. She could have hurt him far worse if she wanted to, but she didn't. She could have mocked him afterward, but she didn't. Instead, she had walked away, with something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Not mockery, not anger, but something he couldn't name. Outside his quarters, 2 Varen guards passed by, talking quietly in their language. He caught only a few words, but one of them made his chest tighten. Bond. He didn't know what it meant in their culture, but he had the strange feeling it was connected to the bite, and to Zyra, and whatever was coming next. Asterisk word of the bite had spread through the entire alien base. At first, Ethan thought it would fade like any other rumor. But instead, it seemed to grow bigger with every retelling. By the end of the week, even the engineers and medics were whispering about the human who claimed a warrior. He didn't understand why it mattered so much back on Earth. Biting someone in a fight was just a desperate move or a way to make someone back off. But Here, it had become something else. The way the Varen looked at him had changed. Some nodded at him in passing a small gesture of respect. Others stepped aside when he walked through the corridors. Even the ones who used to laugh at Zyra's teasing now kept their distance. Ethan noticed Zyra had changed too. She no longer poked him in the halls or stole food from his tray. But she wasn't avoiding him out of fear. If anything, she was watching him more than before. Her glowing eyes would follow him during training, meals, and even in the common area. Sometimes, when their gazes met, she wouldn't smirk, she'd just hold his eyes for a few seconds longer than felt normal. It was unsettling. The full truth hit him during a patrol shift. He was standing guard outside the central armory when two older Varen soldiers approached. They were speaking in their own language, but one of them switched to rough English when they saw him. "You have marked her," the older one said, his voice calm but heavy. Ethan frowned. "Marked? What do you mean?" The alien tilted his head. "You do not know." Ethan shook his head. The two soldiers exchanged glances before one explained, "In our law, a bite done in front of witnesses is a sign of dominance and bond. It means you see her as yours, and that she is under your protection." Ethan froze. "Wait," he said slowly. "You're saying?" "They think I claimed her." Alay nodded. "It is more than claiming, it is binding. Unless she challenges it and wins, the bond stands." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. He had bidden her to make her stop mocking him. He hadn't meant to declare. Whatever this was, later that day, he found Zyra in the training hall. She was practicing alone, her movements sharp and controlled. When she saw him, she stopped and wiped sweat from her brow. "Human," she said simply. "We need to talk," Ethan replied. She arched an eyebrow but didn't stop him. "They're saying the bite means something," he said. Zyra's smirk returned for just a second, then faded. "It does," she admitted. "You made a public claim. You told everyone I am under your dominance." Ethan shook his head. "That's not what I meant." Her eyes narrowed. "It doesn't matter what you Mentower people saw it. They accepted it." He stepped closer. "And you? Do you accept it?" There was a long pause. Zyra looked away, her jaw tightening. "In my world, we do not let just anyone mark us. You surprised me. You are strong." "Stronger than I thought." Her voice softened, almost too quiet to hear. "But this is not something that can be undone easily." For the next few days, Ethan noticed even more changes. Varen warriors who had once ignored him now greeted him as protector when they trained together. No one went easy on him anymore. He was treated like an equal in the ring. And Zyra stayed close, not in a mocking way, but as if keeping watch, when a reckless young recruit almost struck Ethan from behind during drills. Zyra was the one who stepped in, shoving the attacker back with a glare that could have cut steel. It was during one quiet evening meal that the shock fully sank in for Ethan. The room was half empty, and Zyra sat across from him. She leaned forward slightly, her tone serious. "There will be others who test you now," she said. "They will want to see if you can protect what you claimed." Ethan met her eyes. "And if I don't?" She didn't blink. "Then they will take it from you." He realized then that this wasn't just some strange alien custom. He had stepped into their world's oldest rule. Dominance must be defended, or it is lost, as he left the dining hall that night. The words of the older soldier came back to him. "Unless she challenges it and wins, the bond stands." But Zyra hadn't challenged it. She had accepted Etot, least for now. And that meant the rest of the base saw him not as a human visitor, but as a Varen warrior's bonded equal. What he didn't know was that outside the base, others had already heard the story too, and some of them were on their way to see if the human could really live up to the bite. The alien base didn't feel the same anymore. Ethan could sense it the moment he stepped into the training hall or the dining area. The looks he got were different, not mockery, not indifference, but watchfulness. It was as if every Varen he passed was silently measuring him. Some were curious, others suspicious, and a few seemed ready to test him. Zyra's behavior had shifted in ways that made him uneasy. She no longer poked him or mocked him in front of others, but she didn't leave him alone either. She often stood beside him during drills, corrected his stances without asking, and sparred with him more often than before. When she spoke, it was direct, clipped, as if she were training him for something bigger. Sometimes, when the others weren't looking, her gaze softened for just a second before the mask of the proud warrior returned. One morning during weapon practice, the tension finally broke. Ethan was working the training blade, running through the drills Zyra had shown him. A tall, broad-shouldered Varen male named Queenorix approached. His voice was loud enough for the whole room to hear. "So this is the human who marked a warrior," he said. The room grew quiet. Ethan didn't answer. He had learned not to give the first reaction. Queenorix stepped closer, towering over him. "In our law, a claim must be defended. If you cannot, you have no right to it." Ethan glanced at Zyra, who was watching from across the room. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes were sharp. She wasn't going to step in. This was his fight. Ethan dropped the training blade and nodded. "Then let's settle it." The sparring circle formed quickly. The air was thick with anticipation. Queenorix was bigger, stronger, and more experienced in alien combat. The crowd expected Ethan to be flattened in minutes, but the human had been a soldier for years. He knew how to fight opponents who looked unbeatable. Queenorix charged first, swinging his blade with raw power. Ethan stepped aside, letting the attack pass, then countered with a sharp strike to Queenorix's side. It wasn't enough to injure, but it forced the alien to turn. The fight went on, back and forth. Queenorix's strength met Ethan's speed and precision. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Some were surprised the human was still standing. Then Queenorix tried to end it with a heavy downward strike. Ethan stepped in instead of back, slamming his shoulder into Queenorix's chest and knocking him off balance. In one quick move, Ethan grabbed the alien's arm, twisted it, and drove him to the ground. The sand crunched under them as Queenorix landed hard. Ethan pressed the blade gently against his throat, not enough to cut, but enough to make the point. "Still think I can't defend it?" Ethan asked calmly. Queenorix glared, then gave a short nod. The fight was over. Ethan stepped back, and the crowd murmured in approval. Some even tapped their fists to their chests, a sign of respect. From the corner of his eye, Ethan saw Zyra watching. She didn't smile, but there was a flicker of something in her gaze, approval, maybe even pride. That night, Zyra found him in the quiet corridor outside the barracks. "You handled it well," she said simply. Ethan shrugged. Didn't have much choice. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You always have a choice. You chose to stand. Now fewer will test you." He leaned against the wall, studying her. "And you? Still going to test me?" Zyra's lips curved into the faintest smirk. "Always," she said, before walking away. In the days that followed, things continued to change. Some Varen began including Ethan in strategy discussions, asking for more his input. Others invited him to spar, not to humiliate him, but to learn his techniques. Even the guards at the gate nodded to him when he passed. But with the respect came responsibility. Zyra warned him that outsiders, warriors from other garrisons, would eventually hear of him. And when they did, they might come looking to challenge the human who claimed a Varen warrior. One evening, while the base was quiet, Ethan sat in the mess hall, eating alone. Zyra joined him without asking, placing her tray across from his. They ate in silence for a while. Then she spoke softly, her tone almost thoughtful. "In our ways, a bond like this, it changes things. It is not just a fight. It is a promise. Ethan looked at her. And you? Do you see it that way? Her eyes met his, steady and unflinching. I accepted it the moment I didn't challenge you, she said. Whether you meant it or not, claimed me, and I will see how far you can carry it. Ethan didn't answer right away, because deep down, he knew that whatever game this was, it wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about survival. And maybe something neither of them wanted to admit yet. The attack came without warning. It was late evening. The base lights dimmed to simulate night. Most warriors were off duty, resting or eating. Ethan was in the training hall, working through the drills Zyra had given him earlier that week. The rhythmic sound of his strikes against the practice dummy filled the room until the alarms cut through the air like a blade. The sirens blared, followed by the harsh voice of the base commander. Over the outer gates breached. Enemy units inside the perimeter. The words sent a ripple of urgency through every corridor. Ethan grabbed the nearest combat blade and ran. He didn't know who the attackers were, only that they had broken through defenses strong enough to keep out almost anything. The halls were chaos. Varen warriors rushed past him toward the front, armor plates locking into place as they moved. Zyra appeared from the side corridor, already armed, her silver-blue skin gleaming under the emergency lights. She didn't waste time with greetings. Stay close, she ordered. For once, Ethan didn't argue. They reached the outer training yard where the fighting had spilled inside the base walls. The attackers were tall, insect-like creatures with segmented armor and serrated weapons. Their movements were fast, jerky, but precise. They swarmed the Varen defenders. Ethan barely had time to think before one lunged at him. He sidestepped, driving the blade upward through the gap in its chest plating. The creature screeched and collapsed. Zyra was a storm beside him. Her strikes were clean and deadly. Her movements almost dance-like, but even she couldn't be everywhere at once. When one of the insect warriors broke through her guard and slammed into her side, she stumbled. Another attacker moved in from behind her. Ethan didn't think. He crossed the distance in a heartbeat, driving his blade deep into the creature's neck. It dropped instantly. Zyra turned, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she gave a short nod, good, before spinning back into the fight. They fought like that for what felt like hours, covering each other, moving as one. When Ethan's arm began to tire, Zyra took the front when she was cornered. Ethan was there. The bond between them was unspoken but solid. By the time the last of the attackers were driven back through the gates, the yard was littered with bodies. The air was thick with the smell of scorched metal and alien blood as the surviving defenders regrouped. Ethan noticed Zyra leaning against a wall, her breathing uneven. There was a deep gash along her side, seeping dark purple blood. He crossed the yard quickly. "You're hurt." She tried to wave him off. "It's nothing." He ignored her. Pressing his hand to the wound, her jaw tightened, but she didn't push him away. "You saved me," she said quietly, almost as if the words were strange to her. "You've done the same for me," he replied. Her gaze locked with his for a moment. There was no smirk this time. No mocking tone, only something steady and serious. Medics arrived to take the injured. Ethan stayed with Zyra until they reached the medical wing. Even there, she refused to lie down until he assured her the fight was truly over. When she finally sat, she motioned for him to stay near. It wasn't a command, it was almost a request. Over the next 2 days, while the base repaired the damage, something shifted between them. The other Varen noticed it too. Where before they had seen a strange human and a proud warrior locked in a silent contest, now they saw two fighters who had faced death side by side and survived. Some of the older warriors began treating Ethan as if he had always been part of their ranks. They greeted him with the warrior salute, and they looked at Zyra with knowing glances. as if they understood something she hadn't said aloud one evening, when the chaos had finally quieted. Ethan found Zyra on the balcony overlooking the training yard. She was out of armor. Dressed in simple black combat cloth, her side bandaged, he stepped beside her, leaning on the railing. "You fought well," he said. She glanced at him. "So, did you, human?" There was a pause before she added, "When you bit me, I thought you were just defying me. Now I see. You fight like one of us." Ethan gave a small smile. "Maybe I do. Or maybe you fight more like me now, for the first time since they met." Zyra laughed, not a mocking laugh, but something real. It was short, quiet, and gone in a second. But Ethan caught it, and he knew. Something between them had changed forever. The repairs to the base were nearly finished. The walls stood strong again. The gates reinforced, and the scorch marks on the training yard had been scrubbed away. But for Ethan, the biggest change wasn't in the walls, it was in the way the... Varen looked at him. There was no mocking now. No testing glances, only recognition. He had fought beside them, bled beside them, and in their eyes. He had earned a place among warriors. Zyra had healed quickly, though the scar on her side was still visible. She moved through the base with the same confident stride as before. But when she passed Ethan, her gaze no longer carried the sharpness it once had. Instead, there was a quiet weight to it, as if she were thinking about something she wasn't ready to say. One evening, as the red light of the alien sunset bled through the balcony windows, she came to find him. He was in the training hall, alone, working through weapon drills. Her voice broke the silence. "Human," she said. He turned, wiping sweat from his brow. "You have a name, you know?" He replied with a small smirk. She stepped closer, her expression serious. "We need to speak." Ethan set the training blade aside. She didn't circle him like she used to. Didn't smirk or taunt. Instead, she stood still. Her hands clasped behind her back. "When you bit me, you did more than you knew," she began. "In our ways. That act is not just defiance, it is a claim, and you never took it back." Ethan held her gaze. "I didn't mean it like that." Her head tilted slightly, "And yet, you defended it against Corvic, against the whispers, against the attack. You protected me." He exhaled slowly. "You've protected me too." She nodded. "Yes. But protection alone is not the bond. The bond is trust, and now I trust you." The words caught him off guard. Zyra was not the kind to speak feelings easily. Her pride was too strong for that. But the way she said it now carried no arrogance, no challenge. It was an offering. "I don't know your customs," Ethan said after a pause. "But I know this, if I have a bond with someone, I don't break it." Zyra's eyes softened. "Just a fraction in my culture," she said quietly. "Once a bond is accepted, it is for life. Unless one walks away." Silence stretched between them. Ethan thought about the long weeks since he had arrived, the constant testing, the tension, the strange respect that had grown between them. He remembered the way she had mocked him at first, the way she had pushed him, and he remembered standing back to back with her as the enemy poured through the gates. He remembered saving her life and her saving his. Walking away now felt impossible. "I'm not walking away," he said finally. Zyra studied him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. She stepped closer until she was only a foot away. "In our tradition," she said, "this is the moment the bond is sealed. No more testing, no more proving, only standing together." Her hand rose, resting lightly on his shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but from her, it carried the weight of everything they had been through. They stood there for a moment, silent. Then Zyra gave the faintest of smiles. "And one more thing. You can stop calling me you all the time. Use my name," Ethan chuckled. "All right." Zyra. The next day, the rest of the base learned of their decision, not through an announcement, but through the way they moved together. No longer As rivals circling each other, but as partners. When they sparred, it was fierce, but without hostility. When they spoke, it was with an ease that hadn't been there before. The others saw it and understood, late that night, as they stood on the wall, watching the alien stars. Zyra spoke again. You know, human, I never thought I would respect someone from your kind. She admitted. Ethan smirked. And I never thought I'd bite someone and end up here. She laughed softly, shaking her head. Strange paths make the strongest bonds. She said. He looked out at the horizon, then back at her. Then, I guess we're in this for the long haul. And in that quiet moment, under a sky filled with unfamiliar stars, they both knew whatever had started as a challenge, as a fight for dominance, had become something far deeper. Not just a bond of warriors, but the start of a friendship, and perhaps, one day, something more.